Alright, hello, welcome back. This is Guilty here after a very long hiatus. We've moved on to some other hobbies since the dark days of World of Warships. Anyhow, on topic here today with a Moxfield deck tech for Magic the Gathering in the Commander format, celebrating the release of the new Final Fantasy set, which seems to be quite popular overall. And I'm here today with what is probably going to be a more fringe commander, less popular because he's not one of the face cards of the set or of the franchise. So this is Black Waltz number 3, Infect Storm. So this is a Rakdos Turbo Spellslinger list that's aiming to utilize Waltz's ability to basically table kill on your Storm turn. So he is the Storm outlet. So first off, let's take a look at Black Waltz here. So he's a black and a red, so 2 in Rakdos. Legendary creature wizard with flying and death touch. And he says, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Black Waltz number 3 deals 2 damage to each opponent. And he's a 2/2, so he notably survives a Orcish Bowmaster ping, or at least the initial ping. And as well, he's dealing damage, which is important to some of our kill conditions, as we'll see later, but that does mean that any protection or damage prevention effects, such as the one you'll commonly see from the One Ring at higher power tables, is going to stop this trigger from dealing damage to that particular player. Okay, so I have my grid in text right now, so let's go to visual grid. And I want to zoom on click. Oh, okay, guess it doesn't function that way. So I don't want that on. Anyway, so this is going to be the review. Just going to start actually at the mana base. So this is actually my second upload and kind of second draft. We made a couple minor changes. So we were on 27 lands, including an MDFC. Now we're up to 28 because I replaced Kessig Flame Breather, one of our creature outlets, basically a mini Waltz, with a land. We replaced it with Lindblum Industrial Regency, which is a tap land, so not that ideal. Um, but it is a tap land that enters tap, makes a red mana, but also there's Mage Siege, this instant, that creates a 0/1 wizard which has that same ping ability as Waltz himself, so whenever you cast a non-creature, it deals 1 damage. So the reason we switched out Kessig Flame Breather for this land here is because this land technically has a CMC of 0 when you're ad nausing, so we were able to cut 2 CMC. Um, as well, the Mage Siege itself is an instant adventure, so it does trigger Waltz. So we're able to kind of squeeze in an extra spell while also having a tap land if you really, really need it for those games where mana base doesn't work out. So 27 to 28 lands here. It's a turbo mana base, so we have the classics like Ancient Tomb, but as well we have spicy includes like Sandstone Needle and Peat Bog, wherever Peat Bog is. So these are 2 lands that enter tapped with 2 depletion counters on them, and they say remove a depletion counter from Peat Bog and or Sandstone Needle, add 2 black mana to your mana pool, and however, the cost of this, of course, is that these soul lands that make 2 mana, when they run out of counters, they get sacrificed. The rest of the mana base is pretty typical. We got a Fetch Shock mana base with several basics. I have 2 swamps here because originally we were running Blood Moon. Might modify my basics a little bit because we have since cut Blood Moon from the list. We'll talk about that later as well. As many dual lands as we can squeeze in, including these pain lands like City of Brass, Mount Doom, and Mana Confluence, just because as that Storm deck we do need to make sure that our mana is as consistent as possible, and then Urborg to kind of turn on our fetch lands later and make sure we can get the black mana that we need, a lot of black pips. Urza's Saga to fetch some of our 0 mana rocks and other utility pieces, and in Emergence Zone. Now Emergence Zone to give our spells flash. That's the only source of a flash enabler in this particular shell, but it's definitely not at its best in this archetype, but it is there. Cuttable technically if you want a slightly more consistent mana base, having colorless sources that aren't called Ancient Tomb is pretty dangerous. So moving along, we'll move up to the other mana sources, to our artifacts. So we got a pretty standard array of turbo rocks. So all the 0 mana Moxen, Mox Opal, Mox Diamond, Chrome Mox, Soul Ring, that typical fast mana, as well as the 2 fair mana rocks that you're likely to see in these particular colors, so Arcane Signet and Talisman of Indulgence. Did not fit in either Rakdos Signet or Felwar Stone, just wasn't room for it. So moving along from the mana producing rocks, we have the kind of one-shot effects for mana, Lotus Petal, Mana Vault, and Lion's Eye Diamond. LEDs there, of course, for our Grinding Breach combos. And speaking of Grinding Breach, we move on to our utility and or combo pieces. So we have a Grinding Breach, the One Ring, Singleton, Hate pieces of Torpor Orb, and Vexing Bauble, and Defense Grid. Torpor Orb, we have literally just one single card that is affected by Torpor Orb, which is our Dualcaster up here. So just the one effect, otherwise all of our creatures don't care. So this is a pretty powerful and mostly asymmetrical hate piece that we can play. The One Ring for some card advantage that we're sorely lacking, of course, and Vexing Bauble and Defense Grid as defense pieces during your combo turn, stop people from casting free magic, and stop people from uh, just interfering with you in general in colorless. It's what we have available in the Rakdos colors. Just keep in mind if you're going to cast a Vexing Bauble, if you do need to loop through with any of your 0 mana rocks or part of your combo, you're going to have to sacrifice it before you do that and go shields down. And last but not least, we have a Wishclaw Talisman, just one extra tutor. Moving up to the creature base plus this Lone Walker here, we have a Professor Onyx in the Planeswalker slot, and she reads, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So this is just a Chain of Smog Outlet, which is one of the spells that we see here. This is one of our backup win conditions, which is compact and contained within in and of itself. If for whatever reason you're not able to cast Black Waltz, or you get shot mid-combo and you don't have enough mana to get him off and continue. Just 2 spellcasts and you'll be able to kill the table with Chain of Smog. Professor Onyx just costs you, of course, discarding your hand. Now for the rest of the creature base is basically either a combo enabler, a source of mana, or a source of card advantage. That's basically it. So for our enablers, we have Dragon's Rage Channeler and Garland, Knight of Cornelia, which basically just do the same thing. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you get to surveil one, pitches cards into the graveyard. We're going to use the graveyard for several of our effects. We're running Underworld Breach, of course, as well as Yawgmoth's Will, and then there's a Past in Flames and several other Past in Flame analogs as well. Dualcaster, for the Dualcaster Twin Flame combo, we are actually running Molten Duplication as our singleton Twin Flame effect, but basically you just put Molten Duplication onto the stack, target either an artifact or a creature that you control, and then you copy it with Dualcaster Mage. Dualcaster makes a copy of Molten Duplication, copy, copy, copy. You get infinite Dualcaster Mages, and you go to combat and kill people with your hasty Dualcasters. Outside of that, we have the mana producers. So Ashling Flame Dancer provides both card selection, sweeper, and makes mana. Bergi, God of Storytelling, cast a spell, make a red mana. As well, we got Simeon, Spirit Guide, just extra red mana that's not even a spell cast. Stormkiln Artist, and Ragavan, Nimble Pilferer. Ragavan in this deck is not at his best, not really enabling him, but honestly, if he's just a Lotus Petal, if he manages to connect one time, get you a treasure, doesn't even matter what he flips, but if he flips something you can actually cast with some good upside. Other than that, we have some card advantage, so if you flip Bergi onto the other side, you can cast it as Harnfill, Horn of Bounty, which is actually quite relevant in this deck a lot of the time. It's an easy way to kind of refill on some gas if you fizzle out and you run out of cards. The other ones are Party Thrasher, easy discard enabler that gets you some card selection, of course. And then we have some other outlets. Harmonic Prodigy is a nice enabler piece here. It lets you combo off with much less resources, since it says if an ability of a shaman or another wizard you control triggers, it triggers an additional time, so it's a doubler effect for Black Waltz, but it's also a double mill effect for both DRC and Party Thrasher. They get the double trigger. Stormkiln Artist is also a shaman, so you get 2 treasures. Storm Splitter, which we'll talk about later in just a second. I guess double triggers. And then, of course, we have Neheb the Eternal. This is kind of our oddball card from this list. He's 3 and 2 red for a 4/6 legendary creature, zombie miniature warrior with afflict 3, so whenever this creature becomes blocked, the defending player loses 3 life. And he says at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, add a red to your mana pool for each 1 life your opponents have lost each turn. So if you have Waltz and Neheb out and you cast even a single spell in your post-combat main phase, um, Neheb will see that you've dealt 2 damage to 3 opponents and make 6 mana. And of course, this snowballs pretty quickly. If you cast 2 or 3 spells, you're going to be making mana in multiples of 12 as long as all of your opponents are still alive. Last but not least, I think the cards we haven't mentioned in the creatures are Wandering Archaic, so this is just a way to turn the large sums of mana that this deck can churn out into a pseudo card advantage engine or a pseudo, this is kind of like a second defense grid, because this means that your opponents will have to pay 2 for every counterspell that they cast whenever they're casting, otherwise you can counter their counterspell. And Storm Splitter, so we used to have Kuja in this list, so we go to our sideboard. We have Kuja, Genome Sorcerer. He's basically a, oh, oops, sorry about that. He's basically a secondary Waltz. He says at the beginning of your end step, make one of those 0/1 wizards, and then if you have 4 more wizards, you can flip them over. And then his flip side basically is a damage doubler. If a wizard you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage instead. But he got cut for Storm Splitter because he only really triggers on the end step, and this is kind of a mostly sorcery speed combo deck, if you're really being serious. So, Storm Splitter, on the other hand, is a Storm Owlet, as the name might imply. He's also an Auto Wizard of Haste, and he's 3 in a red for a 1/4. That says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a token that's a copy of Storm Splitter, so obviously this is a exponential scaling 2 to the n kind of outlet for your Storm, and you basically, at 7 spell casts after Storm Splitter's on the board, that's 2 to the 7, you'll be at 128 copies of Storm Splitter, which should be enough to wipe the table. One more spellcast will put you up to 256, which should easily wipe the floor in a sort of slower manual Storm turn. Okay, so let's move on to the meat and potatoes of the list. Now at this point we have 22 sorceries, sorry, and 15 instants. So basically the package outside of combo pieces is going to be tutors and card advantage, where you can a couple spare utility pieces like cut to ribbons. This is just a removal spell that doubles as an outlet. You cast cut, kill something that's in your way, and then later on if you have a storm turn where you fizzle and you have a large amount of excess mana, you can cast ribbons from your yard, and if you have Waltz out, you can kind of use that to try and finish off your opponents for the last few ticks of damage. Usually, if you're reaching for that option, you're probably going to deal about 5 to 10 damage with ribbons to each player, and then you get an additional Waltz trigger. Some oddball pieces include Demonic Council, which is basically a second Demonic tutor. You can enable Delirium pretty easily. You're going to be aiming to pitch quite a few cards into the yard, and then another anti Fizzle combo piece. If you have like a failed storm turn, you can go for Galvanic Relay. Now this turbo deck, the aim is to go off on typically turn 2 to 4. That's kind of the window in which that's most reasonable. So we're going to be looking for our main outlets, which are Jessica's Will, if you can loop it, Peer into the Abyss, Wheel of Fortune, and Ad Nauseam. This is the core of the deck. So you're aiming to draw basically as many of the resources as you need to by using these cards to refill your hand and put the spells that are necessary to keep going off into your hand. Otherwise, the rest of the deck is all mana and tutors to make sure you can find these game-ending spells. Outside of tutors and card advantage, we have a couple of things here, like the Molten Duplication, which is for Dualcaster Twin Flame. We have one of Overmaster, which is a red cantrip that gives the next instant or sorcery spell you cast uncounterability, just to force through a Peer into the Abyss or Ad Naus. And then we have our Singleton Sweeper. So this slot could be Fire Covenant if you want to be the most competitive. But this is a newly released 4-mana sorcery, 2 and 2 red. It says choose target creature control. It deals damage equal to its power to each other creature. And if this spell was cast from your graveyard, discard your hand and draw 4 cards. So it naturally has a flashback cost of 5 and 2 red, so 7 mana. But of course, you can also cast it from the yard using Yogg Will, Underworld Breach, or any of the Past in Flames effects to cast for 4. So this is notable for our sweeper because our commander, Waltz, has Death Touch. And so if Waltz is dealing 2 damage to every creature on the board, if you resolve the Nebelheim Flame with his Death Touch, then he'll just basically wipe the entirety of the board. So it's a fun little synergy, and as well, if you cast it from the yard, you get to kind of flip your hand as well, so a good way to reload. In the instance, we have a little more interaction. We got our Braid and a Braid and Deadly Rollick as our creature removal suite, and then a Deflecting Swat for counter magic alongside Pyroblast. Return the favor to either double a spell or change the target and thereby act as a pseudo counter spell. And then the rest is rituals. Other fun cards are Final Fortune here, 2 mana red instant, to help you steal the turn from someone at the end of the turn in case you have the ability to kind of go off in between the turn cycle when people aren't expecting it. And then this, as an all-in Storm combo deck, the 1 turn should be all you need. And last but not least, we have a notable appearance of Tainted Strike, which is one of our Infect outlets for our Infect Storm deck. So Tainted Strike along with Phyresis, down here with the enchantments that we haven't discussed yet, are the 2 ways we have to give Waltz Infect. And so of course you're going to miss your first trigger after you resolve Tainted Strike or Phyresis, but thereafter, rather than casting the 20 spells that you would normally need during the Storm turn without a doubler to kill the table, you just have to cast 5, which obviously is much easier. Last but not least, just going on to the enchantments, these are all pretty much card advantage or combo outlets. So Underworld Breach and Phyresis for our combo outlets. For those that are not aware, Underworld Breach plus Lion's Eye Diamond and or Mox Opal plus Grinding Station will let you mill through your deck while making mana. And eventually, once you have enough mana to cast Waltz, you're probably going to have enough of your library left to just cast Mox Opal or Lion's Eye Diamond 20 times. But otherwise, you'll be able to kind of select for the cards you want to exile in your yard. Roller Crusher Ride is here as a damage doubler if you have Delirium. So it does say if a sorcerer would control would deal non-combat damage. It deals double that damage instead, so it lets your Waltz deal 4 damage and potentially up to 4 Infect. And as well, it also has a secondary function that says when it enters, it deals X damage to each of up to X target creatures. So, as I mentioned, if you have a failed Storm turn, you might have quite a bit of mana lying around, so casting this for X equals 3, X equals 4 is not unfeasible, so you can deal 3 damage, 4 damage to 3 or 4 creatures, and if you have Delirium, then you're going to be dealing 6 or 8, so it's like not a half bad backup removal spell. Ripples of Undeath as just another card that fills the yard, and potentially lets you get some cards back if you have life and mana to spare. Phyresis as the second Infect effect, and Artist Talent to round things out, which is a all-rounder. Artist Talent is a pretty insane card in this archetype, so it's a 2 mana enchantment class, 1 in a red. First mode is whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you may discard cards. If you do, draw cards, so we're going to kind of cycle through our library a little faster. Now, this is the primary mode. The other 2 modes are just gravy on top. So we have level 2 for 2 in a red. It says non-creature spells, you cast 1 less to cast, and let us turbo that much harder as a mana source. And then in a really desperate game, if you really have nothing to do, you can pay another 1 and a red, level up to level 3, where it says if a source you control would deal non-combat damage to an opponent or permanent opponent controls, it deals that much damage plus 2 instead. So it's another damage doubler for Waltz, brings them from 2 to 4. Another doubler outlet for infect damage. We're not going too crazy on the doubler outlets because the aim of this deck is to go off in 1 turn. Once people see you casting Waltz, they're either going to remove him during your combo turn, or if they have nothing to say about it and just let you resolve him, especially if you're trying to put an trying to give him Infect so he can kill the table in 5 spells. If there's no response at that point, the game's already over. He's going to end the game. Okay, so that's it for the deck check. I'm just going to quickly do a bit of gameplay to demonstrate a couple of test hands. I won't go through the entire deck, but we'll start with a couple of playtest hands, and we'll go from there. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in here. This should be pretty large. So, first hand, let's see what we got. So we got 2 lands, which is pretty good. You're going to see a lot of one-landers, and you're going to have to be willing to mulligan a lot of one-landers. So 2 lands, a Seeming Spirit Guide, Lotus Petal, Seething Song, Grim Tutor, and a Galvanic Relay. So, just off the top of my head, there's up to 4 mana at the start. And then you can cast a Seething Song, go up to 6 mana, and then cast a Grim Tutor. Grim Tutor brings us down to 3 mana, right? And then we have a Galvanic Relay. So the worst case scenario of this hand is that we can Galv Relay after Storm is 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're actually going to have an additional card too, because you draw a card in EDH. But of course we're deciding on whether to keep or mulligan. So in terms of permanent mana, we only have 2 permanent mana. We don't have any actual rocks. And we don't have a suitable tutor either that will let us cash in our mana, because we're going to be able to make 6 mana, right? Land, petal, 5 mana, sorry. Land, petal, exile, Simon, Spirit Guide, cast Seething Song. Cast Seething Song, and then we can, sorry, Galv. We won't be able to have double black, because we need to use it for the Seething Song. Otherwise, we can just turn 1 Grim Tutor, but then if we turn 1 Grim Tutor, then we don't really have anything on the reload, because we'll still only have 2 mana next turn. So this hand is quite clearly a mulligan. You could gamble on exiling 3 pretty good cards, because you're going to have Storm is 1, Storm is 2, Storm is 2 casts, so Galvanic Relay says 2 spells cast before it, so you get 3 flips off the top of the library, but this is overall not good enough. So let's just restart. Second hand. Okay. So you have a turn... What do you have here? Mana Vault into D-Tutor with DRC, or we can go Peat Bog, untap, land. We have a D-Tutor. So this is, from the looks of it, a turn 2 ad nauseum, so, or turn 3 ad nauseum, which is not too bad. So in the blind, this is technically my second 7, right? So turn 3 ad naus with some enablers and a backup. If it goes wrong, we can tutor again for a secondary outlet like a Wheel of Fortune or something with Demonic Bargain, hopefully. It's not too bad. I would probably keep this and play it out. Looks like a keep to me. Just to show you the sequencing, it's turn 1, tapped Peat Bog, right? It has 2 counters. And then, oh, sorry. Okay. I was supposed to draw a card, sorry, for my draw step. And then we go to our next turn. We drew nothing, basically. But now we can go Mount Doom. Red source. Tap, remove a counter. 2 black floating. Cast Mana Vaults. Cast Demonic Tutor. Right. Search our library. Put Ad Nauseam into our hand. Close and shuffle. Go into our next turn. Draw another land. Play fetch land. Or actually, you could even... Oh, sorry, we lost a life when we activated Mount Doom last turn. You could even play a swamp, potentially here. And then we go... Need to keep our mana up, right? So remove the counter, it sacrifices itself, 2 black floating. Tap for 3, cast our Adnause. If Adnause resolves, and we're going to assume it is, then we're just going to go. Yogg-Will, -3. Tainted Strike, -1. Technically, you shouldn't be making a land drop yet, but so let's pretend we didn't. Land, 0. Land. Return the favor, 2. Land. Vexing Bauble, 1. Remember, you need to find fast mana. Here's our first one. Mox Diamond, 0. Underworld Breach, okay. 2. Storm Splitter, 4. Will of the Jeskai, 4. Lion's Eye Diamond. We have 2 parts of the combo, and we're going to have access to Breach plus Demonic Tutor in the yard, but no mana yet. We'd have access to... We need to cast Breach before we cast LED, so right now we only have 1 mana and a land drop. So we're already kind of halfway there. Galvanic Relay, 19. Chain of Smog, 17. Mox Opal, oh, Wheel of Fortune. We have basically most of Grinding Breach. Now we have access to a Wheel of Fortune too, if we know it. Grinding Station, Right Flame. Okay, so we have some mana up. Land, Mox Opal. This is a pretty good breach. 0. Oh, Pierce the Abyss. Just be aware that there are 7 drops. At this point, you have to stop pretty much. Can't risk dying. So we're going to put those into our hand. Oh, everything except this. And I appear to have... Okay. So yeah, this is our ginormous hand. Right? So we have no resources right now. We do have a land drop. So, cast Lion's Eye Diamond. If you wanted to track Storm, by the way. Storm is currently 2. We cast Ad Nauseam and Lion's Eye Diamond. So I'm going to add a counter on Mount Doom to track our Storm. Cast Mopul. It is online. Don't want to cast Vexing Bauble. Cast Chrome Mox. Pitch whatever. Ideally a red and a black spell. Doesn't look like we have anything that's double. So let's grab an enabler. So we even have a Tainted Strike. We can go for a shortcut line. We have Chain of Smog without Liliana, so let's just pitch Chain of Smog. So we have a black only Chrome Mox. There's a Mox Diamond in here. Just pitch any random land. Okay. So, from here, there's some pretty easy lines here. Like, you can cast Breach, cast Demonic Tutor. Right, so I could cast Rite of Flame with a red mana. So now I have 2 red floating. Oh, Storm is going up. 2 red floating, I'll represent here. Maybe I should add mana token. Okay, we'll use this as an infinity token. Can I edit the token? Red. Nice. It's actually very nice. Let me just add some other tokens then. Storm. Mind my handwriting. Pretty cool. And this one can be black. So Storm was 4. So we can ignore that now. And then we add 2 here. Okay. So Storm is 4. Up to 2 red mana floating. We have access to a bit more mana. Let's just use the red. cast our Breach. Right, now we have Breach active. Now we can freely pitch our hand if we want to. And there's not too much else of value here, right? So let's cast the Grinding Station, I guess. We'll make any random colors. Storm is 5, right? Now we can make triple red. Crack LED. Our hand goes to our yard. And we have a very large yard, right? Move all to graveyard. Okay, perfect. So we have Mox Opal with Grinding Station with Underworld Breach. So if you're not familiar with this combo, how it works is that I'm gonna grind my Mopal, right? It's already made a mana in this case. I'm gonna grind the Mopal. Go 1, 2, 3. Then I'm gonna use Breach to cast. Use Breach to cast my Mox Opal. Exiling 3 random cards. Doesn't have to be random. Technically, you should be sculpting, but we exile. Now I float for a black, right? And then I grind. When Mox Opal entered, it untaps Grinding Station, because this is the text on Grinding Station. Sacrifice an artifact. Target your player mills 3, and then whenever an artifact comes into play, you may untap Grinding Station. So it untaps every time you have the Mopal enter. You grind it again, right? 1, 2, 3. Oops, sorry. Then, of course, you cast it. Exiling 1, 2, 3. Tap for one of whatever, right? Then you grind, then you tap. So every cycle you make 1 mana. You can, because we have LED, we can also do this with Lion's Eye Diamond. So let me grind it one more time, right? 1, 2, 3. So let's take our Lion's Eye Diamond out this time for 1, 2, 3. So this one you do it a little faster, right? Because I can crack and sack, right? Add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I discard my non-existent hand. It's in the yard again. I didn't mill any cards. However, now I can cast it for... let's not use the mobile. 1, 2, 3, right? Cast Lion's Eye Diamond. Untap Grinding Breach. This time, instead of making mana, I'm going to just eat it. Alright, 1, 2, 3. And so now I'm making 3 mana per cycle, or 3 mana every 2 cycles, which is 1.5 mana on average per cycle, as opposed to the 1 that you get off Monk's Opal. Anyway, so we have 54 cards in our library left. So let's just cast our commander. Let's cast Waltz, right? Cast 4 mana. And he's going to see that every 3 cards that you have in your library, he can ping for 2 damage if your opponents have taken no other damage. We're also accumulating Infinite Storm as we do this. So there's a lot of ways to go about this. Right now, at 54 cards in my library, I don't technically have enough cards left in my library. Well, I have 54 plus 26. So I can... all I need is 60 cards total between graveyard and library for me to cast my Mox Opal 20 times, right? And then we have the Lion's Eye Diamond as well, right? So we can shortcut that to 1.5 per cycle. Need to get to 20. 1.5 by 20 is, I believe, 14 casts. So we would only need 14 by 3. So we would only need 42 cards. So we can definitely just manually kill with Waltz. But also, in this instance, keep in mind that we have a Tainted Strike, if I'm not mistaken. So we can also just cast Tainted Strike from the yard and cast 5 spells that are non-creature spells, and or cast Phyresis. the mana is basically not a problem at this point, but this is effectively a kill. Okay, so that was our one speculative hand, and this was a turn 3 kill off our Nos. After drawing quite a bit of our deck, we even flipped a 7-drop and survived. Okay, let's just look at a couple more test hands. Alright, so this is a no-lander with nothing to pitch into the yard. No way to turn on Mox Diamonds or for Soul Ring. If we had any one land here, we could keep, but or if Mox Diamond was Chrome Mox, we could keep potentially. But this is a no-go. So we restart. Let's go to our second 7. Looking at our second 7, we have Peat Bog with Gnaws Pyroblast. So this is a turn 2 Wheel of Fortune that's going to pitch a Past in Flames into the yard. But after we Wheel of Fortune is completely random, so it's the same as taking a random 7. The other option, if we don't want to wheel, is we can Demonic Bargain for a little bit more gas, but overall this hand is just not doing very much of anything. So on my second 7, I would also mulligan this. Okay, so now we're on 6. We have a hand with Mopul, Mox Diamond, Lion-Tide Diamond. So this is an active Mox Opal, putting back 1 card, but the last card is a ritual. So we're not really doing anything here. We're going to have lots of mana, but nothing to do with it. So we go to 5. Okay, now we're on 5, so we're just going to start to get more picky. We do thankfully have 2 lands. We have a Mana Vault, Artist Talent to filter our hand, or Glimpse. So we have a couple. Glimpse and Galvanic Relay are kind of analogous. Galvanic Relay will always get you a card for the next turn at the very least. So what can you sequence? So it's turn 1, Badlands into Mana Vault, untap with 5 mana, and then we can turn to Snow-Covered Swamp, cast Artist Talent, pass, and then from there we're gonna have at least 5 mana to cast Glimpse to see 3 new cards. Potentially, maybe if we find the right cards, casting Relay as well. So I'd probably keep this 5. And since we know Relay's not guaranteed, so we're just probably keep 5, putting back Deflecting Swat and Relay. And then we draw, right, on our first turn. So now we got our tap land, so we do have an outlet for some spells. But overall, this doesn't change very much. We are going to go tap and crack, right? View all, pick up Badlands, close and shuffle, cast Mana Vault, pass the turn, draw land. It's pretty nice. So we can go Swamp, Artist Talent, pass, go. Okay, we drew an Ashling, but no second red source. So pretty clearly here to me, we're gonna try, I think. So we're gonna tap Mana Vault for 3. Don't need to tap the Swamp yet, actually. Cast Glimpse. So Glimpse, we have an Artist Talent trigger. We may discard a card. It's pretty unlikely that we're gonna get the double red for Ashling, but it is gas for next turn. So the worst card is clearly Swamp to me. So let's draw a card. We drew LED. So now let's resolve Glimpse. Exile the top 3 cards. You may cast them. Okay. Alright, alright. So we're not going to be able to cast any of these. We're floating 2 colorless mana, but these are all stinkers. So let's see if there's anything else we can do. Let's cast Lion's Eye Diamond, trigger Artist Talent. Discard, then draw. I already played a land for a turn? No, I haven't actually. So I can at least cast the Peat Bog if I feel like I don't need 2 mana. The problem with casting Peat Bog is that I won't be able to cast Ashling if I do that. Right now I'm not guaranteed a red source. I am not able to exile Simian Spirit Guide because it's not in my hand. So these two are definitely staying in exile. I don't want to Final Fortune either, but you can see how mulliganing to 5 is pretty risky on our turn 3 here. I'd probably honestly just leave them all in exile and hope that Ashling finds me something useful. But yeah, we have a trigger to resolve still. I think Ashling and Guaranteed Red Source are too important, so I'm going to decline the trigger. Put in a tapped Peat Bog, and then we're going to let the 2 mana fizzle off. And so we go to our end step, so we're going to get 3 Eldrazi tokens. So we got 3 spawns, because we, oh sorry, 2 spawns, because we cast only one of the spells from Glimpse the Unthinkable. Alright, so we drew a dead card. Oh sorry, we were supposed to, okay, my brain is not functioning very well. We were supposed to cast this as a tap land and leave this in exile. That's why we're supposed to have an extra Eldrazi spawn. So as you can see here, we whiffed completely. No discard outlets. Oh, this stays tapped, sorry. Thank you, Moxfield, for untapping my Mana Vault, but it stays tapped actually. I'm not going to pay 4 on my upkeep. But I do have a land and a bunch of spawns. So even though I have these spawns to like block or do whatever, I'm just going to cast Ashling. And I'm going to do it using a spawn so that way I have an extra card to discard if I really want to. Nothing to do with the mana, you're forced to untap, upkeep, draw. Alright, no action. So in this case, now at this point, you can play land. I'm gonna crack it. Pick up my Surveil land, probably. Close and shuffle. This enters tapped. Surveil the top card. Don't want that. Cast Waltz. Alright, so now we have a couple engines on time. We're just waiting to draw gas. Underworld Breach. Okay, well, my yard's pretty empty. There is a glimpse, so it's not a terrible breach turn. We have nothing going on anyway, right? So, pretty clearly we're going to cast this basic and red source. Seems pretty clear. We have a breach too. Cast triggers from Ashling. Oh, well, not from Ashling, from Artist Talent is not an instant or sorcery. So we have an Artist Talent trigger and a Waltz trigger. Resolve the Waltz trigger, everyone takes 2. Discard this land quite clearly. Draw Harmonic Prodigy. Okay. Unfortunately, that doesn't do anything there. So I don't have any mana. This is like pretty low cards in the yard. Breach. Unless I want to, this is tapped still, sorry, I took an additional damage on upkeep. So I have access to 5 mana. And then I can get a little bit more mana with my Lion's Eye Diamond. So, let us... I want to keep this Badlands untapped, so let's sack this. Cast Harmonic Prodigy. Now we get double triggers of Ashling and Waltz. Crack for 3 red. 3 red floating. Then we're going to cast Glimpse, exiling 3 lands. Alright. These go into permanent exile. So Glimpse trigger on the stack. We're going to get 2 Waltz triggers and 2 Ashling triggers. So she's going to trigger twice. So the first trigger, she's going to deal 2 damage to each opponent. And then when her trigger doubles, it's actually going to go... She's going to get an additional draw discard. So she gets 2 draw discards. And then a ping, because it's the second time it resolves. If I'm not mistaken, if this is the second time it's resolved... Oh, this is the first time though. So we'll get the first one where whenever you cast, because we didn't get a trigger off Underworld Breach. So this is our first trigger. So we cast and copy, discard, and then we get a second trigger, which is the second time. So we discard what we drew. Okay, so you're obliged to discard, draw. You have an empty hand. You discard, draw. Now resolve the second trigger. Discard, draw, and Ashling pings everyone for 2. And that's the way the Harmonic Prodigy and Ashling trigger works. Then we have the optional May trigger on Artist Talent. Since it's an optional May, we can kind of think about whether or not we want this Pyroblast in our hand as well at this point. So it's not that useful since we're trying to go off. Although it is a spellcast. But yeah, not that useful overall. And then we get 2 Waltz triggers. Now we'll resolve our Glimpse. So these are the spells we can pick up. Ooh, Yogwill. It's interesting, certainly. We can gamble. And we have a Talisman of Impulse. However, we're currently down to only 1 mana available. So we could gamble, but we're going to need to cast an LED again for mana again. So we can gamble for a couple of times and then Yogwill. So clearly from here there is a line, but this video is getting a bit long. So I'm going to end it off here. But you can see how even on this Mole to 5, where we missed a couple of times, once we found just the one random card, it happened to be Underworld Breach, of course. But this could have been any tutor, like a demonic tutor. There's like 10 tutors in here. To tutor for Underworld Breach or tutor for Yogwill, and we would have been able to do the same thing. So I'm going to end off the video here. Anyhow, I hope this was a helpful demonstration of Waltz Infect Storm. And happy Final Fantasy gaming out there. Cheers.